Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Traditionally, I do vlogs, but from time to time, I will do a cooking video. And so I am going to show you guys how I have been making my sourdough bread. I already have a sourdough bread video up, but I feel like I've improved since that video. My loaves have improved, and I've had questions. I've had questions on my Instagram. As much as I just can tell someone, this is more of a show recipe. You guys need to see how I'm doing it to duplicate what I'm doing. By the way, I've been making sourdough bread for over a year now, and from my experience, there are so many different techniques out there. You just have to find what works for you, and if you're happy with your sourdough loaf. I don't get into all the fancy designs. I want to. That's something I'm continuing to learn. I know how to cut the ear, and that's like that traditional slice around the side of the sourdough loaf before you bake it. Also, in this video, everything's going to be like in real time, meaning like this time of day is usually when I'm starting to make the sourdough bread, and then all the way into the evening, and then the next morning I continue, and then by afternoon I usually have it in the oven baking. I think just once you get the techniques down, you got this. You can do it. It's really not that hard at all. Okay, now that I'm done telling you all that, I'm gonna show you what I use for the recipe. Now, this is not a how to make a starter video, but if I get enough requests, I will make that. But there are so many YouTube videos on how to make sourdough starter. Mine is like, I think people would make fun of me the way I do it, but it is a no fail and it's worked for me. But I will just show you right now everything that I use to make my loaves. Okay, I have everything out on the counter. Typically, I don't have everything like this out, but because of the video, I want to show you guys what I use. I have to have a bowl out to mix my sourdough starter, which is right here. And I'm going to be putting some water in it, some salt, totally optional, but my husband loves sesame seeds in it, so I put sesame seeds, probably just this amount. And then of course, our main star over here, the flour. You can use traditional flour or bread flour works. This is a 7-quart cast iron pan. This is my Banneton, which I end up lining all the time with parchment paper. And then after everything's done cooking, I put it on a cooling rack. You'll need a measuring cup. You'll need a whisk for in the beginning. You can use saran wrap or press and seal, whatever you have on hand, and the towel that you will use to cover it. Okay, I just cleared the counter so you guys can have a more clear view of what this is typical when I start my sourdough bread. This is exactly what I'll be using. Okay, you're gonna wanna follow these steps exactly how I'm doing them if you want it to turn out like my sourdough loaves. This is 2 cups of warm water just from the tap. You can use filtered and warm it, totally up to you. Okay, next, sourdough starter. I do not measure how much I put in, but I'm going to say it is about probably a cup's worth, give or take. You want it to float, and it's floating, so that's a good sign. And then I will feed Frank. That's what we've named our sourdough starter. Amanda's filming for me, my youngest. Anyway, so I will feed Frank later on. Okay, next, salt. You can use any kind of salt you want. This is just what I've been using lately, but I've used like different kinds, like Himalayan pink salt, I've used table salt, whatever salt you want to use. It's about a tablespoon, give or take, depending on how salty you want it. So I just take the palm of my hand and I kind of do about that much. And then I just put it right in there. Remember I said this was optional. This is just sesame seed, and I'm gonna put the whole thing in. I'm just gonna go ahead, you've got to mix this before you add the flour. Mix it real good. Just make sure everything's incorporated. This bowl is great. You can use whatever tall bowl you have or wide mouth bowl you have. Next is the flour, and I do measure this, but it's about 4 cups. But it's gonna be how your dough feels to your hands. Okay, this next part, this is the 4th cup. Haven't added it yet, but I'm going to add about half of it. And then I'm gonna mix it all together, and if I need to add the rest, I will. Okay, I'm gonna take off all my jewelry because we're gonna get a little messy. Okay, roll up your sleeves too, because like I said, you get a little messy. I'm gonna go wash my hands. And you're just kind of folding it a little bit. You don't have to be too gentle with it or anything. You just wanna incorporate everything. This is the traditional, how I do my loaves pretty much, like I said, 3 to 4 times a week. So I'm thinking this needs maybe a little bit more flour. We'll start with that. You don't want it too moist, but you also don't want it too dry. Okay, you've mixed everything. Now time to just let it rest. You can come back in a half hour, 2 hours. Now we're gonna let it rest, but I like to cover it. This is what I've learned to do. I spray it with some Pam spray or whatever spray you have on hand. and then I just cover it. This is so it doesn't dry out. And then you just take like a baking towel and that's it. I will come back and I will show you guys what I do next. Sourdough is still resting. It's probably been like 15 minutes since I mixed it all together. Don't feel like you have to start at 3:20 p.m. when you make your sourdough mix. I have been known to start it like at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. You do want to have at least some time to let it rest and come back and fold it at least once. My battery died, but I think I was telling you guys don't have to start at 3. You can start at 6, you can start at 9, as long as you give it time to let it rest and then at least fold it once, maybe twice ideally, before you let it rest overnight. I think what I was saying was people have asked, do you leave it on the counter? Do you put it in the refrigerator? I've done both. The problem with leaving it on the counter is that it usually expands really big by the time you wake up in the morning. And if you're sleeping in really late, it's gonna be overflowing. So if you don't want to chance that, keep it in the fridge, but you do need to make sure you have that plastic wrap on top with like some Pam spray and then cover it and you should be fine. Okay, it is 4:43. I just got back from a walk. I'm going to now take my dough that's been resting and I am going to fold it and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I just go ahead and take everything off. Okay, it doesn't look too different. Here is a big tip that I'm gonna give you that works for me. I wet my hands with water. Instead of using oil or flour or Pam spray, I just wet my hands to fold the dough. As you can tell, my hands are wet and the idea is just to fold the dough in over itself. Don't be scared of it, but that water sure helps. And if you feel like it's getting too sticky on your fingers, you can go back and wet your hands again. Take that same cover and then take your towel and just let it rest again for a couple more hours. Probably come back in about another hour or so, maybe 2 or 3 hours even. Okay, I wanna show you guys at 6:36. Okay, so now it's time to fold the dough. I learned this one technique that I've been using for my bread from another person who I follow on Instagram that does sourdough bread. And she slaps the dough and I will show you. It kind of sounds funny and it looks funny, but I think it really helps the dough with like the air pockets and stuff like that. Okay, I'm gonna get my counter slightly wet, just enough. I don't use flour or oil. I'm gonna get my hands wet and I will shape it. Okay, I'm just putting a little bit of water on my counter instead of oil or flour. And my hands are clean and wet. And now I'm going to do that slapping I was telling you about. If your hands start to get super sticky, you can always put more water on them. Now, if I were doing my final shaping, this is what I would be doing, and that's fine that I'm doing it right now. You don't have to do this. It just makes it look pretty. And those little specks are the sesame seeds that you see. And just let it rest again. I probably will come back again one more time before it's final proofing and I will either slap it again or I will just fold it. And then tomorrow I will shape it and put it in the Banneton with the wax paper or the parchment paper and then let it rise and then I'll bake it. Almost 8:30 p.m. and I figure this will be the last time tonight and then I'll put it into the refrigerator after I slap the dough. Okay, this is what it looks like right now. Okay, so my hands are wet and I'm gonna fold it. You can either fold it or you can slap it. Folding it would be kind of like this. And you could just be done and cover it at this point, but I'm gonna go ahead and slap it one more time. So you just wanna pick it up on opposite sides and throw it down or slap it down. I'm gonna do this tomorrow when I put it in the proofing basket and slice the ear, but I'll show you that in the morning. Okay, now I'm just gonna put this right back into my bowl. I decided to use some more press and seal, spray it, and then just put it right over your dough. You just don't want it to dry out. Cover it with a cloth. You could just leave this on the counter and it definitely will grow and get pretty tall, maybe even come over the sides. I really don't care for that, so I'm gonna put mine in the refrigerator tonight. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep it in here and I will show you what I do in the morning. Okay, good morning guys. It's 7:21, time to take out the dough from the refrigerator. That's why you want the Pam spray, because it just slides right off. Okay, it didn't rise a lot, which understandably, because it's been in the refrigerator. Had it been on the counter, it would have been overflowing this rim. Because it's gonna be its last proofing, I'm gonna go ahead and toss this plastic wrap, press and seal, whatever you wanna call it. For this next step, I use my Banneton and some parchment paper. I just get enough to cover the top, so I can put my dough in the center. This will be its last proofing that I do, and then I will just cover it with this cloth. I won't need that press and seal anymore. I just kind of do what it takes to keep that sitting in there for when I put my dough in. And I rather have a little too much than not enough parchment paper, but this was probably a little too much. Remember to wet your counter and wet your hands. And I just washed my hands, but I'm gonna go ahead and wet them again. I'm gonna go ahead and do this step. I'm going to fold my dough around. I'm gonna take it out and I'm gonna do that slapping. My dough is obviously cold. Okay, now I'm going to do the final shaping. You're just bringing it in towards you, pushing it and bringing it in. I use this hand to guide. It's like I'm tucking the back. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now I'm gonna cut the ear like right around here. I used to use a knife until I got this little gadget. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the ear. I guess it doesn't matter what side. I got this on Amazon, by the way, and so I just like quickly like cut the side there. It's not perfect, but it does the job. Okay guys, so this is its final proofing. I know my fancy cut is not perfect, but it works for me. Okay, now just cover it. And probably in about 3 hours, I will be popping this baby in the oven. Okay, it is afternoon. I'm just showing you guys an update what the sourdough bread looks like. I probably could get away with baking it right now, but I think I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer. Okay, I decided to preheat the oven at 450 degrees. I'm going to put my cast iron pan into the oven so it can preheat along with it. Okay, just want to show you guys that my cast iron pan's in the oven preheating. The oven is preheated. It's been preheated for about 10 minutes. And now I'm going to put the loaf into the cast iron and then put the lid back on for 25 minutes. Okay, it's time to take the lid off. A little tip that I've learned is when the 25 minutes is up from the lid being off, you can just keep your oven ajar and let it sit for about 10 minutes. I heard that helps keep the bread moist inside and like hard on the outside. You don't have to do that, but that's just something I do. And it turns out great either way. Let's see.
It's beautiful.
Don't call me crazy, but I take it out.
Crazy.
Crazy.
Cute.
Okay, you guys, this is what it looks like just coming out of the oven. It's pretty hot still. You want to let it cool before you cut into it. I've heard about a half hour to an hour. I might, for the sake of the video, cut into it sooner, but I think it looks pretty good. Okay, I wanted to flip it to show you guys underneath. Okay, I'm gonna let that cool and then we'll cut into it. Okay, I just wanted to show you guys in this light. Look at the bread, I think it looks pretty good. You know, it's not terribly even, but I think the color is good. The height isn't so bad. And you know, every loaf is different. They're gonna turn out different every time, but you just keep trying. Okay, I'm gonna take it from the cooling rack, put it onto the cutting board, and we're gonna cut into it. Looks pretty good. This is really good. This is very moist, crunchy on the outside. Normally I would not cut into the loaf when it's still pretty warm like this, but for you guys I wanted to show you. Definitely let it cool, but sometimes you can't resist eating some warm bread. Once it cools, I just store it. We still have some sourdough bread left, but I just store it in here. It usually gets eaten up within 2 days, 2 or 3 days here in my house. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Just leave them in the comment section, and we'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.